Good morning. Today is the 21st day of ER, the 29th of May, and we are looking at the fourth reading of Bechukotai. And this reading is really about three different topics, plus one more bonus. Okay. Let's look at them. It's a very interesting topic which we call valuation. Erchin. Erchin is the name. Arachin really means value. It's the Aramaic form of it. It means, it's the name of a tractate in the Talmud, a tractate that I, in the past, very much was connected to. Unfortunately, I haven't had time in the last few years to learn it again. And this tractate is very interesting for a lot of reasons. I remember that a long time ago I heard a class from Rav Ginsburg who claimed that this is the most psychological of all the tractates in the Talmud. And that's a big statement coming from him, that everything here is psychology. So let's see what this is all about. I'm going to start reading from it because really the only way to get a sense for what's going on is just hear what the Torah has to say about this. These are laws that are not commonly known, but let's see what they are. So we're reading in Leviticus 27, verse 1. I'm going to read directly from the Vishnevsky translation. God spoke to Moses saying, we skipped something here. Speak to the Israelites and say to them, when a person articulates a vow, pledging the value of life, meaning his own value, or a value of someone else, of a living person, or a vital organ of a living person, meaning if I say, I'm pledging to give to the temple the value of this person's heart. That's like saying, I'm pledging to give the temple the entire value of this person, or it could be myself. How do you even evaluate something like that? So we might have thought, and this is the way that we'd probably go based on logic, that if a person wants to do that, we come and ask, how much is the value of this person in a market? In other words, if he would go to sell himself to servitude, indentured servitude, how much would he gain? How much would people pay him to work for them for a certain amount of time? The problem with this is that when the time is limited, you can't really know because you're asking what is the total value of the person. So really, you would have to ask how much would somebody be willing to pay if they sold themselves into unlimited servitude, and that doesn't work so well for a lot of reasons. And also, at the core of this is again this psychological question, really, of a person who wants to know how much they're worth. It's something that's really deep in our in our psyche, that we want to know that we have value, and so we're like asking, so what is my value? What is this person's value? How would you evaluate this? How would you do this? So the Torah says like this: the value he will have thereby obligated himself to pay for having pledged the life of a male person will be dependent solely upon the age of the person whose value he pledged. It has nothing to do with abilities. It has everything to do with age. And how does this work? So, if it's a male and he's from 20 to 60 years old, the value is 50 shekels. 50 shekels of silver. According to the weight of the sacred shekel, 20 ger per shekel, and it comes out to about a kilogram. Okay? So a person from 20 to 60, a male, is about 1 kilogram of silver. That's not very much, actually, if you think about it. Then, but if it's a female, it's 30 shekels, meaning about exactly 3/5 of that. If it's someone who's from 20 to, from 5 years to 20 years, so then it's 20 shekels. If it's a female who's from 5 to 20 years, it's 10 shekels. If the person is from 1 month to 5 years old, the endowment for a male, or the value for a male, is 5 shekels of silver, and the value for a female will be 3 shekels of silver. If the person is 60 years or over, so for the male it'll be 15 shekels, for the female it'll be 10 shekels. Now, so that's the first type of valuation that the person wants to donate to the temple. Then the Torah takes sort of a twist, and this is the bonus, and it starts talking about exchanging, substituting, redeeming sacrifices. And it works like this. If a person pledges part of an animal whose type is fit to be brought as an offering to God, whatever part of it the person is donating to God will become holy. And he must not exchange it, whether it's a whole animal or a small part of an animal, he must not exchange it with someone else's animal, nor substitute it, meaning he said, this animal, this part, he can't replace it with something else. He must not exchange it nor substitute it, whether it's for a better one or for a worse one. He can't do this. You have to bring the specific animal that you pointed at, that you said, this animal is going to be a sacrifice. If he does, nevertheless, substitute one animal for another, it and its replacement will become consecrated. So if you decided to do something like that, you didn't gain anything, but rather you just designated 2 animals instead of 1. So although it is forbidden to exchange or substitute an unconsecrated animal for a consecrated one, it is permitted to redeem a consecrated animal. What does that mean? That I want to not exchange it, I'm not exchanging it, but I'm saying I want to take it out of its consecrated state. Why would this be permissible? Only if the animal has been blemished in some way. So, because it's blemished, I can't bring it as a sacrifice anymore, but I still want to bring the value of the animal that I wanted. So what I can do is, so I can redeem the animal. And then I bring the animal to the priest, he evaluates it, meaning he decides on how much it's worth, and according to the valuation of the priest, so will be its redemption value. And then I buy a different animal for the same amount. So that can be done, but I can't do the exchange myself. But if the animal's original owner redeems it, he does not simply pay the value attached to it, he must add its fifth to its value. So it's 1.2 times the value that the priest said. And now the Torah goes back to doing the same thing that we did with valuating a human. It now does it with valuating a home, and finally, valuating an estate. And I don't want to get into them because I want to focus on valuating the human. What is really going on here? What does it mean that a person wants to know their value? So we said this is a very deep psychological thing that people want to know, that they have value. And so a lot of times we want to say that our value is somehow related to our abilities. But the Torah doesn't want us to think that way. The Torah wants to say value is a product of your years. You see that the people who have the least value are the youngest. And the people who have the more value, the most value, well, are the ones from 20 to 60. And it would make some sense that a regular person from 60 and on is worth a little bit less. But this notion, I want to stress, is very contrary to the way that people judge it in the Western world. And people in the Western world want to say that the value of life is much greater when you're younger, because somehow you're innocent or something. Somehow you haven't tasted from the pleasures of life. Whereas the Torah doesn't see it that way. The Torah says that as you mature, as you grow older, as more years pass, your value increases because in a sense, the universe has invested more in you already. And so you have more value. But when you're young, we don't know. Will you be something that's worthwhile, not worthwhile? Will you even survive? We don't know these things, so the value is low. So it's a basic idea. Now, apart from this, I want to look at just a few more points about these valuations. So the numbers, if you remember, going in order from 0 to 5, for the male, from, not 0 to 5, it's a mistake, from 1 month to 5 years is 5 shekels. From 5 years to 20 years, 20 shekels. From 20 to 60, 50 shekels. From 60 plus is 15. So what is the sum of all these numbers? 5 plus 20 plus 50 plus 15. It's equal to melech, 90, the value of king. In other words, what this is saying in a certain sense is that the life of a male is dedicated to resembling the king. The king here is the masculine side of the divine. Another way of saying it actually is that it's not just the masculine side of the divine, it's what we would call the image of God in man. So all these valuations together, 5, 20, 50, and 15, which equal 90, they equal a king. You have the potential as a male to reflect the divine image within you. What are the numbers for the female? There are 3, 10, 30, and 10. 3, 10, 30, and 10. What's the sum of those numbers? So all those numbers together, they equal, you can tell me, 43. Right? 53, sorry. 53. What is that? So 53 on the face of it is, well, the thing that's most associated with 53 is the number of Torah portions. We've talked about this, that there are 53 Torah portions. Really, there are 54, and there's a lot of reasons why we in the end say 53. One of the simplest ones is the last, the 51st and 52nd are like one, Nitzavim Vayelech, because they're both too short to almost be called a separate one. But there's many, many different explanations about why in the end we say there's 53. So we have this very interesting idea that the female is related to the Torah, that the male is related to showing the divine image, and the female is related to revealing the Torah, to being connected to the Torah. But there's a verse that brings these two numbers together in a very interesting way, and this is a verse from Jeremiah, and it says, "Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion, shout, O daughter of Jerusalem, behold, your king comes to you, he is righteous and having salvation, lowly and riding upon a donkey, even upon a colt, the foal of a donkey." What is this talking about? I don't think this is Jeremiah, actually. If I'm not mistaken, this is actually Isaiah, but I don't remember. Why is this verse why does this verse relate to both 53 and to 90 together? Because the first word, gili, rejoice, is equal to 53. And we know that the female, the understanding, which is the left side, is related to joy. Torah is at its core joy. In other words, if a person is studying Torah, they're learning Torah, and they don't have the joy that comes from understanding the Torah, then they're missing the point. The whole point is to have joy. The rest of the verse, which is talking about the king, about the Mashiach who's going to come, so he's called Malkech, your king. And that relates to the 90 that we saw before, the number for the male. So we have here a beautiful marriage in this verse between the joy of the daughter of Zion, the daughter of Jerusalem, together with the Mashiach himself. And we know that there's an intrinsic connection between the two. And the Mashiach here is described as a person of lowliness. It's one of the few places that the Torah explains very clearly that the king has to be someone whose interior feels lowliness. He doesn't feel like he's anyone special. And that's really what's behind this whole thing of valuation. That when I started out, I wanted to hear, what's my value? You know what? It doesn't matter what you achieved in life. It doesn't matter what you've done so far. Your real value is just the number of years that God has given you so far. That's the value. That's having the lowliness, the humility of the king. And when you have the lowliness and humility of the king, the result, I don't know if we've talked about this ever in length, but I talk about it in a lot of places, especially on the nefesh.org, in the rectifying the ego, that when a person reaches a state of lowliness, he becomes full of joy. Because lowliness comes and says, I really have nothing of my own. All I have is the years that God gave me. That's my true value. It's not something that I did or didn't do. It's something that God gave me. And the moment that I understand that everything that I've done is a gift from God, I can rejoice in everything that I have accomplished in my life. Because none of it was granted. None of it had to happen. These are all gifts from God. Let's end with one more small point here. But let me just sum that up again. That the more a person reveals the image of God in them by being a king, the more they can rejoice, the more they have gili, the more they have their feminine aspect come out, and the joy of life appears. But again, one depends on the other. And we may have mentioned once that there's a whole Hasidic book that's dedicated to this topic. It was written by someone whose day of fasting will be on the 26th of Iyar, in 4 days, and Rabbi Isaac of Homel, and it's called the Essay on Humility or Lowliness and Joy. How these two things depend on one another. But let's just end with one small, beautiful thing here, that this mitzvah, this commandment of valuation, comes directly after the curses that we just heard, the curses and the blessings. The key to being able to transform the curses into a blessing, exactly that, to see the inner quality of what there is in life, is this ability to evaluate myself properly, to see myself in the right light. The more I see life as a gift, the more I understand that everything that I have is a gift from God, the more I can transform and realize that even things that seem to be harsh and difficult are actually in their inner aspect, they're all blessings, because they're all part of life. I had a conversation with one of my sons last night, and I'll end with this because we've really gone over the time today. But it was a really strong conversation, and I saw that it had a strong impact on him. And he came to me with a lot of complaints about how things are not working out in his life. He's only 21, but he already thinks that he's been through who knows what. In any case, I told him, you're right. Nothing's working in your life. The thing that everybody wants to hear is, no, what are you talking about? You're successful, you're this, you're that. It's not true. The whole way of Chassidut, the whole way of the Torah's inner dimension, is to acknowledge the fact that if it were not for God's help, I am totally void and chaotic inside. I am standing on something that's very unfirm. I don't have anything very, very stable underneath me. The only thing that keeps me up is God. And the moment that a person acknowledges that, that is the beginning of being able to take pleasure in all the goodness that I have. The reason that people find it so hard to see the goodness in life, to transform what seems on the exterior to be a curse into actually a blessing, which it really is because we take for granted that we're supposed to be successful. And the moment that you see that, and God reminds you from time to time, you're not so successful, all these things that you thought were accomplishments, your value is just your years. It's nothing beyond that. The moment that you can see that is the moment that you begin to change the curses into blessings. And you rectify this whole first part of the Torah portion that we talked about yesterday. Wishing you all the best. Hoping to see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.